All right, I'm going to be reading from the 37th chapter of Ezekiel, and I just want you. I didn't put it up here because I don't want to distract anybody from this story. Okay, so just want you to concentrate. Think about the words that I'm reading. Maybe you might even think about closing your eyes and kind of try to visualize this. This is one of the great stories of the Bible, and it's so rich in visual and auditory imagery. Let me just read it. So Ezekiel chapter 37, verses 1 through 14. The hand of the Lord was on me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones. He led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. And he asked me, "Son of man, can these bones live?" I said, "Sovereign Lord, you alone know." Then he said to me, "Prophesy to these bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord." So I prophesied as I was commanded. And as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound, and the bones came together, bone to bone. I looked, and tendons and flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, "Prophesy to the breath. Prophesy, Son of man, and say to it, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Come, breath from the four winds, and breathe into these slain so that they may live." So I prophesied as he commanded, and the breath entered them, and they came to life and stood on their feet, a vast army. Then he said to me, "Son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. They say, our bones are dried up, and our hope is gone. We are cut off. Therefore, prophesy to them, say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. My people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord when I open your graves and bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. May the Lord add his blessing to the reading of his word. So Ezekiel was a prophet of the exile, which means that he prophesied during that time when Israel was in exile in Babylon. So here's the little history of this. 605 BC, the Babylonian Empire was rising. At first they took out the Assyrians, and then they headed into Judah. Judah was next. Now, Israel, the northern kingdom, had already fallen about a century before to the Assyrians. And now Judah was jeopardized. So in 605, it's the first invasion of Judah by the Babylonians. Josiah, the former king, went out to the valley of Jezreel, the battle of Carchemish, to fight against the Babylonians, and he was killed. And his son, Jehoiachin, took his place. Jehoiachin only ruled for a couple of months, and he was replaced by the Babylonians by his brother, Jehoiakim. So now the Babylonians are in charge. They have put their client king on the throne, Jehoiakim. And he's the guy that shows up in the book of Jeremiah as kind of Jeremiah's nemesis. He's the guy who cut the scroll with a knife. Not a very good guy, bad king. Jehoiakim ruled for a while under the Babylonians as a client of them, and then he decides that he's had enough of the Babylonians and he wants to ally himself with Egypt. Turns out to be a bad idea because the Babylonians come and they basically clean up on the Egyptians, and then they proceed to lay siege to Jerusalem. And they capture the city, and they loot the city, and then they take many people back to Babylon as hostages. So it was at that time, 605, mid 605 was when Daniel and his friends were taken to Babylon. In 597, after the rebellion of Jehoiakim, Ezekiel, the young priest, and 10,000 of the choice citizens of Jerusalem are taken to Babylon. So that's how Ezekiel gets to Babylon. Now those exiles in Babylon, they're sitting there, they're exiled from their home. It's a bad situation. But they always kind of look back and, the temple is still there. At least we still have the temple. And the idea their thought was, as long as the temple stood, Jerusalem could not be conquered. Because, the temple is the place where God's presence is. So surely God would not allow Jerusalem to fall as long as the temple was there. But Ezekiel, one of the things that he has to tell the people is, the Spirit of God has left the temple. And so in 589, King Zedekiah, who had been placed, again, a client king of the Babylonians, who had been placed on the throne of Judah, King Zedekiah rebels against the Babylonians. I don't know what it is about these kings anyway. He rebels against the Babylonians. The Babylonians come in. Jerusalem is destroyed. The temple is destroyed. And many people are killed, of course, and many people are taken captive. The king himself is blinded, but not before he sees all of his sons and heirs executed by the Babylonians. And so this news comes back to Babylon. And the people there hear it, and they realize that all of their hopes of returning, all of their hopes of someday coming back to their home, the very existence of their nation has ended. It says it and it expresses their thoughts, and their thoughts, our bones are dried up and our hope is gone. We are cut off. There were people without hope. There were people without a future, they believed. But God takes his prophet Ezekiel. We have in verse 1. The hand of the Lord was on me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley that was full of bones. God is not yet done with his people. And now this vision of Ezekiel, the valley of bones, we will see it. So Ezekiel was taken out. The hand of the Lord was upon me. He brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord into a valley, the middle of a valley. So we're out there, somewhere out in the desert, in a valley. And the Spirit of the Lord is taking Ezekiel. Can you imagine? I don't know exactly how this works, but maybe in a vision, maybe physically he's picked up and taken to this valley. So here he is in this valley. Imagine you've been there. Death Valley. Imagine Badwater. Have you been to Badwater? The lowest place in the continental, in the North American continent. It's just a salt flat. There's nothing there, basically. So imagine that we have Death Valley. But on top of the fact that it's all barren and dry and arid, it's full of bones. As far as you can see, bones everywhere. So over here there's a leg bone, over here there's a pelvis, over here there's a skull, and they're just scattered all over the place. Some scholars believe that this perhaps was the site of a great battle, because in those days, you remember in the story of David and Goliath, the two armies, the Philistines and the Israelites, are on separate hills, facing one another. There's a valley in between. Well, that's how you did it in those days. The other armies would take up, I think we did that in the Civil War, didn't we? Yeah, we took up positions on the high points, and then we would come down into the valley to fight. They did it in those days. So this is a place perhaps where there had been a great battle take place, and the slain lay in the valley, unburied. That was one of the ways that the enemy, the victorious enemy, had of insulting you is by not burying the body. Remember, David says to Goliath, I will leave your body for the birds of the air, the beasts of the field. Remember that? Okay, so that's the idea. So totally defeated, like Israel. A valley full of bones. So if that's not creepy enough, verse 2. He led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. So it's not bad enough. You've got a valley of bones. God says to Ezekiel, walk around. Walk around and get a good look. But he's walking around. I imagine, there's a couple of bones crunching under his feet. He's walking around, he's looking at all these bones, and here he says, they are bones that are very dry. Now, I don't know what you know about bones. I don't know anything about bones, but I have read. We think of a bone as kind of just a stick, kind of a dry thing. But bones are really living things. They have blood vessels flowing through them. There's marrow in them. There's all sorts of life in a bone. They're not just dry, dead sticks. Our skeletons are living parts of us. But these are so dry. There's no marrow in them. There's no blood in them. There's no fluid at all. They're completely dry. This is Ezekiel's way of saying these are dead. Dead. They're really dead. So he walks around and he sees it, and they're very dry. Then God asked a question in verse 3. He asked me, Son of man, can these bones live? I said, Sovereign Lord, you alone know. So God asked the question, can these bones live? And I can imagine, I don't know, Ezekiel could have said a lot of things. He could have said, I don't know. God, these are pretty dry. These are pretty dead. And I don't think so. But instead, this is the right answer. Sovereign Lord, you alone know. First of all, he acknowledges God's sovereignty, which is a $10 word, which just means that God can do whatever he wants to do. When you're dealing with God, all bets are off, right? So he says, well, yeah, you could. You could bring them to life. I don't know. You know. Good answer, Ezekiel. And so God gives him a command. I love this. He said to me, prophesy to these bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Now, prophesy, the best word I can come up with to explain to you what the word prophesy means is the word preach. Basically, he's saying to Ezekiel, preach to the dry bones. Now, I got to tell you. I'll say to you, sometimes I feel like I'm preaching to dry bones. I'm just saying. Not always, but sometimes. And it would not be an enjoyable prospect. Preach to the dry bones. So, Ezekiel, I'm not sure, Lord, what good that's going to do. Maybe Ezekiel doesn't know what to say, so God tells him exactly what to say. Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh from upon you, and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am Lord. So, Ezekiel. So I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I was prophesying, there was a noise. a rattling sound. And the bones came together, bone to bone. I looked, and tendons and flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. So he begins to preach the bones. I don't know the text of the sermon. Well, basically it's what God says. This is what the Lord says. And as he's speaking, he starts hearing a rattle. So that's the bones are rattling around. They start moving. They start coming together. The toe bone connected to the foot bone, the foot bone connected to the ankle bone connected to the leg bone connected. Someone can make a song out of it. Maybe we ought to sing it. And the bones come together. So then you have the skeletons, laying there, all assembled. And he says, I looked, and tendons and flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them. And so now they start to grow tendons and muscles and flesh. I got a picture. This is I don't know if you can see this very well. Gustave Doré, who did all those crazy etchings. This is Ezekiel's vision. It's just really creepy. And it's kind of dark. I know it's difficult to see, but I had to share that. I like it because I'm kind of twisted. Anyway, there you go. So he preaches to the bones, and they start coming together. It's just full of imagery. And you can hear the sound. The bones rattling as they come together. But he says, but they had no breath in them. It's interesting here, the word breath is the word ruach in Hebrew. And the word ruach in Hebrew can mean many things. Sometimes it's translated breath, as it is here. In the same passage, it's also translated wind. It's also translated spirit. So you go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, it says, the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the deep. That's the word, the ruach of God. The breath of God, the wind of God, the Spirit of God. This is the word that can also mean spirit. They were together, but there was no spirit in them. There was no breath in them. There was no wind in them. There was no life in them. Genesis 2:7. He makes man. He makes Adam. Makes man out of the dust of the earth. And he creates the physical body of the man, but it's just a lump of dirt. But then it says in Genesis 2:7, the Lord breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, the ruach of life. And the man became a living being. Isn't that amazing? And so there's this play on words here. See, if God can do that, if he can breathe life into a lump of dirt and become a living being, he can do anything. But look, so many times, we can be like the bodies without the breath. We're all there, we're all together, we've got it all together, but there is life in us. A lot of churches, I think this speaks to the twin action of the Word and the Spirit. Both acting together to bring life. There are a lot of churches, we're all about the Word. We're all about the Bible, we teach the Bible, we're very careful in our exegesis, in our exegesis and our exposition. I don't even know if that's a word. And we're, fully exegeted and exposited and all of that. But there's no life. Then you got other churches that are all about the Spirit. You know what I mean? Jumping and singing and hollering and rolling in the aisles and all that kind of stuff. But doctrine, don't get me started with doctrine. I haven't got time for that. But you see, you got to have both. We've got to have the guidance of the Word. We've got to have the anchorage of the Word, but we've also got to have the exuberance of the Spirit. So many times we're one or the other. That's a strange thing that's happening in the church today. We need to be both. Not the word alone, and not the spirit alone, but both together. So, verse 9 and 10. So what do? God, then he said to me, prophesy to the breath, or the ruach. Prophesy, son of man, and say to it, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Come, breath, ruach, from the four winds, ruach, and breathe into these slain that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded, and breath, ruach, entered them, and they came to life and stood on their feet. A vast army. Breath, the wind, the spirit comes into them, and now they're alive and stand on their feet. It's a vast army. Not just a crowd of people. You see, we're brought to life spiritually to be an army. We're brought to life spiritually to fulfill a purpose, not just to, sit there week after week, month after month, little spot in a pew. But to be God's servant, to be God's army in the world. So they rise up a vast army. Now they're alive, word and spirit, body and the soul. Then God gives the interpretation. Just so you know, Ezekiel, this is a parable. Then he said to me, son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. They say, our bones are dried up, our hope is gone, we are cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, my people, I am going to open up your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord when I open your graves and bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken and have done it, declares the Lord. These bones of the people of Israel, this is an image of the people of Israel. They were exiles in a foreign land. I don't think many of us know what it's like to be an exile or a refugee. We see the people around the world that are driven out of their countries for political reasons or because of warfare taking place or whatever's happening. We see these people living in camps and the squalor they live in. To understand what it is to be an exile, we don't really understand that. But there are senses, there are ways in our lives, in our hearts, in our souls, that we are exiles. As believers, this world is not our home. We are strangers in a strange land. We walk in a world that is not our own. God says, these bones are my people Israel. And he promises them, I will open your graves. I will bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. I will put my spirit in you and you will live. They thought they were as good as dead. They thought there was no hope. Jerusalem is destroyed. The temple is destroyed. There is no hope. We're as good as dead. God says, it ain't no problem with me. I raise people from the dead all the time. You may be dead, but I will raise you up. Now there's a couple of ways that this was fulfilled. Of course, 70 years later, the king of Persia, Cyrus, would declare that the Israelites could return to their homeland. And they return to Jerusalem, they rebuild the temple, they build a second temple. It's not as grand as the first, but they do return. This story is told in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. They return to their kingdom. This has never happened before in history, friends. that a people return, so totally destroyed, return to their home. Some people would say that the modern state of Israel is also fulfilled. The Jewish people, after 120 AD, when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem a second time, and they were spread throughout the earth for 2,000 years, 1,900 years at least, and they come back into their land after World War II, and once again to inhabit their land. Perhaps that's the second fulfillment. But I think the third and the greatest fulfillment of this is what God promises us in the New Testament. I will put my Spirit within you. On the day of Pentecost, the Spirit came upon the church, upon the disciples of Jesus, and filled them with His power. And every Christian now, as we believe in Him, as we're brought into the family of God, we receive the Spirit of God. I will bring you up out of your graves, and I will return you to the land. We have the promise as believers. When Christ returns, the dead will rise and meet Him in the air, and we will all be together with Him in His kingdom. And so, there are multiple fulfillments of this prophecy. Now you're wondering, maybe you're not, but you shouldn't. You wonder, okay, so what does this have to do with Advent? I mean, this is more suitable to Halloween, right, than really than Advent. But here's the time. Today, second Sunday of Advent is traditionally the Sunday of peace. You've heard my wife read passages about peace. Here's a cool thing. This is the first time I've ever really put this together. Okay, the Hebrew word for peace, you know what it is. It's shalom. Shalom. Now, shalom doesn't just mean, cessation of hostilities. When we think of peace today, generally we're talking about the absence of warfare. The nations coming together in peace, and, we all turn our plowshares and the pruning hooks, and we all get together and sing Kumbaya or something, that idea of peace, the end of warfare. And that is included in the idea of shalom, but shalom is much richer. The word itself means wholeness or completeness when it's a noun. Wholeness or completeness. And it can be used to refer to a wall that is strong, complete, and whole. Or a building that is put together, or a community of people. As a verb, it means to make whole or complete. Think about it. Related back to the story of the vision of Ezekiel, you have all of these bones that are scattered, and God's power brings them together, makes them whole and complete, puts flesh on them, and then brings life to them. Shalom. This is the Jewish concept of shalom. They're brought together, they're brought to wholeness. Let's go on into the New Testament. The Greek word for peace is eirene. It comes from two Greek words which mean to come together. To come together. Once again, think about this. The bones come together in God's power. They're brought to wholeness. They're brought to eirene. Peace. See, peace is more than just a cessation of hostilities. It's the restoring of right relationship with us, with God, right relationship with one another. We talked for a couple of weeks about the horizontal and the vertical relationship. The peace, that relationship made whole and complete again. That's what peace is about. And that's what we see in this vision. God brings peace. He will restore the people to shalom. He will restore His people to eirene as we come together. You see, like no other, God can take the broken pieces and He can put them together. And Paul says in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 14, "For He Himself is our peace." Speaking of Christ. Christ is our peace. So when we talk about peace on earth, as the angels say, peace has come to earth because Christ is our peace. Isaiah, he is the Prince of Peace, the Prince of Shalom. He himself is our peace. And in our lives, he brings the broken pieces together. I don't know what your broken pieces. You know, we all have them, right? All of our lives, we have broken pieces. We have scattered. We have scattered. Our lives are scattered. And God, in our hearts, can bring them together. He can bind up the broken pieces. He can bring the bones together and make them whole. He can put flesh and tendons on it. He can give us life. And if we lack peace, we can find that peace in Jesus Christ, our peace. Let's pray.